There are a lot of distilleries in Scotland, over 140 making whiskey. But every now and then, one comes along that makes you stop and pay attention. Today I'm talking about the Hearach, and the first single malt from the Isle of Harris distillery. And trust me, there is more to this whiskey than just what's in the bottle. The Isle of Harris is one of Scotland's most remote islands, known for its rugged landscapes, dramatic coastlines, and of course, Harris Tweed. But the region has never had a whiskey distillery, until now. Isle of Harris Distillery opened its doors in 2015 with a mission beyond whiskey. The founders wanted to create local jobs and boost the island's economy because the island's population has been consistently dwindling. The distillery, they thought, would give young people a reason to stay rather than move away. They call it a social distillery, meaning that the focus isn't just on making great whiskey, but also on supporting the local community. This vision was spearheaded by Burr Bakewell, who saw whiskey not just as a product, but as a way to bring economic sustainability to the region. And while it may have started with only, I think it was 10 people, the distillery is now growing. It employs over 40 people, which I think is an impressive number, considering the island's entire population is only around 2,000 people. It's not just about keeping traditions alive, it's about ensuring a future for the people of Harris. Now, you might wonder, like I did, why start a new whiskey distillery in what seems like an overcrowded market? Scotch whiskey is an institution, but it's also facing rising production costs, increasing consumer prices, and even closures. Just recently, Waterford Distillery in Ireland announced it was shutting down operations, an example of how tough the market is even for innovative brands. On top of that, the cost of raw materials has skyrocketed. Barley prices have risen significantly due to supply chain issues and, of course, climate concerns. Energy costs for distilling remain high, and even packaging expenses are up. Consumers, we're feeling it too. Bottle prices across the industry are climbing, leading some drinkers to seek out alternatives like independent bottlers or even world whiskey from places like India. But moving past that, one thing that immediately stands out with the Hearach is the branding. The bottle, I think, is a work of art. Designed by Stranger & Stranger, the same agency behind Bushmills, Erin, and Compass Box, the glass has this really neat rippling texture, inspired apparently by the waves around Harris. And the label is simple but elegant. It's the kind of bottle you want to keep long after it's empty. But branding isn't just about aesthetics, it's about storytelling. Stranger & Stranger specializes in making bottles that feel like an extension of the whiskey's origin. And they've done that beautifully here. The design evokes the maritime heritage of Harris, giving it a sense of place even before you pour a drink. And if you happen to be sailing around and you need a drink, just follow the coordinates on the bottom of the bottle. It'll take you right to them. But I talk too much. Let's dive in and give it a taste. I have here a sample, I'll grab in a second, of the Hearach's Single Malt Matured in Oloroso casks, given to me by TS Global. Thank you, Carmana and Zoe. I have also had their single malt, which I'll talk about in a little bit at an event, but let's give this one a review first. Here it is. We're looking at 46% here, so let's give it a pour. Color-wise, it's got this really nice bright amber color, just as you would expect. Oh, the nose is nice. It's not too sweet. You sort of get this nice spice with a bit of cinnamon, just a hint of peat and some orchard fruits. Okay. You get a little bit of peat there, just on the very back end, but on the front, it's sweet, like a sticky toffee pudding with dark chocolate. That sort of moves into something more herbal and green, almost like mint. You definitely get those dark fruits coming out, like overripe figs. Yeah, definitely this distinct sort of herbal greenness to it. Really nice. That aftertaste is really long It's subtle and soft, but you get this nice wave of peat that comes through at the very end, which I really like. Really nice whiskey. So while I don't have their single malt in front of me, I can tell you that I remember a distinct bourbon nose to it. It was kind of funny. I was with my wife at the time, and I told her I thought it smelled like Buffalo Trace. Sure enough, after a little bit of digging, I found Buffalo Trace was one of the casks that they used. And to me, it also had this oily, really nice texture. The single malt also had that sort of light smoke and a hint of peat, but the palate was more like stewed apples with rhubarb, baking spices, and cinnamon. I think if I recall, it finished similar, a little bit briny, the sort of maritimeness with that peat. The Hearach is made using water from one of the island's natural burns. While the distillery focuses on traditional methods, long fermentation times up to 72 hours, and copper pot stills that create that oily texture, the single malt is aged in a variety of ex-bourbon casks, including Buffalo Trace and Heaven Hill. You might remember just picked up some nice World Whiskey Awards. But they also age the single malt in Oloroso sherry and Fino casks. This gives it layers of complexity, balancing sweetness, and a coastal minerality. The Oloroso is aged in, unsurprisingly, 100% sherry butts, which I definitely get. Unlike many new distilleries that release young spirits or heavily peated expressions to stand out, or in my opinion, cover something up, Hearach has taken a more classic approach, aiming for balance, nuance, and an unmistakable sense of place. Many of you probably know I'm a sucker for sherry-finished whiskeys, and while this one wasn't just finished in sherry, it was aged in sherry, I actually would be sipping their single malt if I had to choose one, which yes, that even surprised me. The single malt here, where I am, is $145 Canadian a bottle, and the Oloroso is $160 a bottle. That's a big price tag in my opinion, with some good competition. I'm surprised such a new distillery would come out with a price tag, making it hard for many to take a chance on. But if you're in the market for a bottle of that price, it's certainly worth a try. Isle of Hearach is doing something special. They're not just making whiskey. After meeting with Peter on their team who came out here for an event, they're building a legacy. And with the Hearach, they've given us a whiskey that is as much about place as it is about the drink inside. In a time when the whiskey industry is facing rising costs and uncertainty, this is a whiskey that feels meaningful. As consumers, I think it's important to put our dollars where our values are. And this is a distillery that values people and community. If you've had it, let me know your thoughts below in the comments. And if you haven't, well, you might want to add this one to your list. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you soon. Thanks again.